So, check this out. Guys, we are just 3 days away from Mission Men's Axe Throwing Night. This Wednesday, right here at Mission, we will be bringing out professional axe throwers to teach us how to play darts with axes. It's going to be awesome. We will be grilling, hanging out, and throwing axes. Don't miss this chance to connect with other guys here at Mission. Register now at missionaz.org. Wednesday night, starting on October 20th, Mission Women will be going through Christine Cain's study, Unashamed. Christine believes that in order to change the future, we have to realize God is bigger than our mistakes, inadequacies, and limitations. Learn how you can step into your future with confidence, knowing you are dearly loved and created for a divine purpose. Register now at missionaz.org. Join us Friday, October 29th for a Halloween-themed movie night right here in the Worship Center. Bring the whole family and be sure to dress up. Register online to let us know you're coming. Serve Day is coming up. On Saturday, November 6th, we'll be heading out to several partner sites to make a difference in our community and show them the love of Christ through service. If you've been a part of one of these days in the past, you know how rewarding it can be to serve the many families in need throughout our community. Registration is now live, so head over to missionaz.org to register. Mission Young Adults, join us at Fat Cats in Gilbert for a night of bowling and fun on October 21st at 6:30 p.m. Cost is just $15, and that includes 90 minutes of bowling, shoe rental, and a soda. Appetizers will also be provided. Register now to let us know you're coming. You can register at missionaz.org to let us know that you're coming. We would love to see you there. Well, that's all we have for now. Again, we just want to say thank you for choosing to spend your morning with us here at Mission. With that said, let's get ready to worship.
shadows, you in every battle. Nothing can stand against the power of our God. Almighty fortress, you go before us. Nothing can stand against the power of our God.
can separate us? You are for me. What can stand against us? Your love, it won't let go. I know it won't. Darkness, shadows have no power over me. Fear is empty. Shame has no authority. Your love, it won't let go. I know it won't. And I know your thoughts and your plans for me are good. And I know you hold my future in my heart. Your promises will never fail. Your promises will never fail. They never will. Healing and freedom as you speak favor over me. Faith is breaking all impossibility. Your name has overcome. Your name alone. For I know your thoughts and your plans for me are good. And I know you hold my future in my heart. Your promises will never fail. 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 They never fail. 'Cause you never will, God. Come on, if you believe this, let's sing it. I'm standing on every promise that you make. I will see it come to pass in your name, in your name. Jesus, I will trust every word I hear you say. I will see it come to pass in your name, in your name. I am standing on every promise that you made. I will see it come to pass in your name, in your name. Jesus, I will trust every word I hear you say. I will see it come to pass in your name, in your name. It's in your name. Always trust you, God. Every word you say, we believe you, God. 'Cause you're faithful forevermore. Yes, you are. And I am standing on, come on. I will see it come to pass in your name, in your name. Jesus, I will trust every word I hear you say. I will see it come to pass in your name, in your name. I will see it come to pass in your name, in your name. And I will see it come to pass in your name, in your name.
Well, good morning, Mission. I'm Rachel. Welcome to Mission this morning. Whether you're joining us in person or online, we're just so glad you would choose to spend your Sunday here with us. And if you are new here, maybe it's your first time, we would love the opportunity to meet you. So I want to invite you to the hub. It's just through these center doors out in the lobby. We'd love to answer any questions that you have, and we have a free gift for you as well. Well, as you guys heard in the video before, we have a ton of things coming up at Mission. I am personally so excited for Date Night Phoenix that's coming up. It is back. I know a lot of you guys are excited as well. That is on November 19th. This is a date night you want to prioritize. It's so much fun. You're going to laugh. You're going to have a great time. Well, this week, you guys, men, you have your axe throwing event. It sounds a little dangerous to me, but I guess that's part of the fun, right? So make sure to sign up for that. That's this Wednesday night. Well, I can't believe I'm saying this, but we are headed into our holiday season, which for Mission means a season of generosity. We kick that off with a serve day. That's on November 6th. This is a great thing to invite your friends, your family, your small group, your neighbors to. So come out on November 6th and serve together with us. And last but not least, we are supporting the Department of Child Safety this month. So on your way out today, you're going to receive a card. It's going to have a list of items that they are in desperate need of. So if you'd like to participate in that, just go grab those items during the week and bring them back next Sunday. We'll have a tent in the courtyard. Well, if you guys are a regular giver here with us, I just want to say thank you so much, a sincere thank you for partnering with us and what God is up to, not only within the walls of this church, but outside in our community as well. We're going to give you a moment right now to give either through our app or online at missionaz.org.
Good morning, Mission. How's everyone doing? It's good to be back here with you all. The last couple weeks have been fantastic. Been tuning in. You had Jared Hurd. We kicked off this series all through the book of Galatians. And then last week, my buddy Ian came out from Nashville. How was he? Was that all right? Yeah, it's great. It's fun to have different styled communicators who love the gospel, who love the Bible. Jared has such an incredible, he's an amazing communicator, teacher, pastor. He's hilarious. And then you had the driest humor ever in Ian. And I just loved it. I loved it. So today we are going to dive into what I think is probably one of the hardest chapters in Scripture to teach, which is always fun, that they gave this one to me. Week 2, last week, we learned about how Ian, and he kind of unpacked this, how Paul went after Peter. He basically was like, hey, you think in one way, act in another. You proclaim one act in the way that you live, the way that you eat with people, and then when certain people come, you totally neglect the gospel. So he like goes after Peter, who's a big deal. Today, Paul turns his attention to basically the entire Galatians. So he goes after Peter, and I'm sure the whole church is like, ooh, that was pretty cool. And then Paul's like, oh, I'm not done with you all. I got something for you. Look what he says. Galatians 3, chapter 1 says this, verse 1, you foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? Before your very eyes, Jesus Christ was clearly portrayed as crucified. Now, when this word portrayed is used, it's all like art terminology. This is like, I painted this picture of the gospel and you have forgotten it. Some other teachers have come in and have begun to tell you about the gospel, and I'm telling you, it is in direct opposition to what I taught you. This is what has Paul so irked. Look what he says, verse 2. He says, I would like to learn just one thing from you. So good. Did you receive the Spirit by the works of the law or by believing what you heard? Next slide. Are you so foolish? After beginning by means of the Spirit, are you now trying to finish by means of the flesh? Now, Paul, he just calls people out. He opposes Peter and he's like, Galatians, you're foolish. Who like bewitched you? Be like Paul coming over like, you Gilbert Tians or something. You're foolish. Who's got in your mind? What have they been teaching you? Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna walk through something. And there's gonna be these words like spirit and law and curse and blessing. I promise you, on Mondays when we gather as like a teaching team, I read through the entire Galatians 3 with the team, and I was like, what do you want me to do with this? And they're like, I don't know, figure it out, Steve. Because I promise you, commentators, they basically don't even engage with this passage. They love Galatians 2, they love Galatians 5, fruit of the Spirit. Galatians 3, it is tricky. So the only way I know how to teach this is like to take us back to like fellowship hall days and like old school Bible study. And I promise you, if you stay with me, it might make sense. Okay, this is the best I can get to you, okay? Nick Asolis was telling me, he's like, I bet if Paul taught this today, he'd even confuse himself. But like, I promise you, there is such good stuff here. And if not, there's the tallest ladder I've ever seen that's already scaring me, okay? So here's what I need you to know. Those first 3 passages that we read, the struggle with what Paul is trying to get at is he feels like these teachers have come in and basically said faith plus obedience equals salvation. You have faith, but if you literally do it this way, then you will actually be saved. And Paul was like, what are you talking about? And truth be told, some churches have taught this. If you believe the right stuff and you behave in the right way, then you can belong to Christ. And there are denominations that have taught this. And this is anti-gospel. And what Paul is saying is, no, you don't understand, Galatians. Who has bewitched you? It is faith plus salvation that equals obedience. Like, it is like the faith that you have and the salvation of what God has done for you that actually equals a new, transformed, sanctified, obedient life. And if you get this wrong, it's gonna lead you towards a path of what he will describe as either the promise, which we just sang about, or the law, which we will talk about. And I'll tell you what, within the church, this thing creeps in on the regular. It creeps in on the regular. If you believe and you behave, then you can belong. But the gospel is, if you believe, and because of what Christ did, you belong. And when you believe and you have a healthy understanding of your identity that you belong, it will change the way that you behave. This is radically different. So there's this amazing book on the cross. If you want to study the cross, there was this British pastor, preacher, legend. His name is John Stott. He's an incredible writer. He wrote a thick book called The Cross of Christ. Inside that book, there is this section on Galatians 3, and he's one of the only cats who go after Galatians 3 in what I believe is the proper way. He says this, and I've taken 3 words that he takes in this statement where he talks about Galatians 3 constitutes the necessity of the cross, the meaning and the consequences. And basically, this is what we're gonna do today in our teach. We are gonna talk about the necessity of the cross, because if you don't get this, you miss out. And I promise you that for many of us, and even myself for many, many years, I did not understand the necessity of the cross. And I went to Bible college. And I think for many of us, we don't understand the meaning of the law and promise, which is in Galatians 3, and the consequences of not understanding the gospel. I only have one prayer right now for today. Is that somehow for the next 57 minutes, I can hold your attention so that you can see what Paul is trying to say. If you can literally lean into this, I promise you it will change the way that you see the cross. It will change the way that you understand how God sees you. And I really, really believe it will change the way you live. So let's start with the necessity of the cross. When you go back to the Hebrew scriptures, what we know as the Old Testament, it's known as the Tanakh. It's made up in 3 sections. In our Old Testament, we have 39 books. In the Tanakh, they have 24. All the same books, we just have 1st and 2nd Chronicles. They just have Chronicles. But the first 5 books of the Bible are known as the Torah. And this is the teachings, the wisdom. This is how we live. The synonyms for the Torah were the way in which to walk in step and in harmony with God, the truth to walk in step in harmony with God, and the light to walk in step in harmony with God. These were the synonyms. Inside the Torah, there were 613 what we know as laws or commands. In Hebrew, it's the word mitzvot. It literally means sacred deeds to walk in step and in tune with God. And the whole Torah was about hesed. It was about this relationship, this covenant relationship between the Almighty God and a people. And when you were in relationship and you walked in step and in tune and in harmony with God, you would be blessed. And the blessing was the favor of relationship. But if you actually chose to go your own way, you chose not to walk in the way, the truth, the light. You chose not to embody the 613 mitzvot, you would experience the curse. And there is this unbelievable relationship between the blessing versus the curse. And the curse isn't like Harry Potter, like you've been cursed. The curse was literally to be cut off, cut out, to not be in a relationship. If you think about this from a marriage standpoint, if there's one partner who ends up bailing in covenantal relationship, they would call it the curse. Because all of a sudden the relationship was cut off. It's cut out. Opportunity for blessing in this, to walk in tune and step and in harmony, cut off. So you need to understand this, because what you're about to see in 5 verses is the clearest understanding of the necessity of the gospel outside of 2 Corinthians 5. But there's this language of blessing and curse. Watch this, verse 10. For all who rely on the works of the law are under a curse, as it is written. Okay, real quick. Can you imagine like Paul, who's this rabbi, who's studied under the best rabbis, who has been brought up studying the Torah, studying the 613 commandments. He's like, oh yeah, guys, check this out. Hey, for all of you who rely on this, who've relied on literally following the way, the truth, the light of the law, you're actually under a curse. And all these people would have been like, what are you talking about? He continues on, he says this, curse is everyone who does not continue to do everything written in the book of the law. What he's saying is, the law was the standard at which you had to live your life, and at any moment, any moment you didn't follow through on some aspect of the law, you were cut off. You're cut out. It's all about just doing and doing and doing and doing. It continues on, verse 11. Clearly, no one who relies on the law is justified before God. And that word before literally means to stand and be fully seen. So anyone who relies on the law can't be fully justified and seen by God as righteous, because the righteous will live by faith. There's some other difference that Paul's trying to get at. Continues on. The law is not based on faith. On the contrary, it says the person who does these things will live by them. So the law has no faith. It's just literally, did I do Sabbath well? Did I go through this process at the temple well? Did I show alms or charity well? Did I not eat pork? All of the law, and people had this checklist, these rules at which they were living their life. And then look what it says beautifully. Paul goes into the necessity of the gospel. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law, from this game of trying to check boxes and be right, by becoming a curse for us. And this is what scholars don't want to talk about. That Christ became a curse for us. 2 Corinthians 5 will say he became sin. And the truth is, when we think about this, is that Christ actually experienced what it feels like, what it is like to be cut off, to experience the curse. Now, you have to understand this, because when we think about the cross, sometimes we just think about it as, oh, it's a gift of forgiveness. We've been forgiven. We've been forgiven. And then we mess up. And we're like, oh yeah, but the cross, he forgave us. He forgave us. You have to understand that some 2,000 years ago, Jesus took on all of what we would do to cut us off from right relationship with God. He took it upon himself. He doesn't become sin per se. He's not like some sinner. He was perfect. But he took all of it onto his shoulders. He took all of it onto his life. This is why when he's in the Garden of Gethsemane and he's praying, he's sweating blood. Because the weight of the world's sin, the curse, all of the decisions I make every single day that keep me far from God, he took and said, I will be the curse so that you can be the blessing. And again, for many of us, we're like, he's just so nice. He went to the cross, he forgave us. No. He actually cut himself off. And I use this example, cutting off from like this relationship. Like, I see a guy wearing a Chicago Bears shirt. What's your name? Zach, awesome. I love your team. I'm a Bears guy too. This is not our year. Next year's not our year. Our year doesn't come until Aaron Rodgers goes to be with the Lord, but here's the deal, okay? Here's what I need you to know. Zach, I don't think we've ever met. Okay, so I don't know you. I have an affinity with what you're wearing. If you're watching online, he's wearing a Bears shirt, bear down. It's biblical, bear with one another from the book of Colossians. Now, here's the deal. What I need you to know though is if all of a sudden, in the middle of this teach, Zach gets up and walks out. He's like, I don't like that guy. Cut off from relationship with him. I'll be like, that's a bummer. Like, I like Bear fans. They're nice. Okay? But let's say Kevin, and I like Kevin a lot. Kevin and I, we've been doing ministry the last year together. But let's say Kevin just is like, dude, I don't like Steve. That hurt a little bit more, wouldn't it? Let's say like all of a sudden I go, Mark Fritz, one of the best humans on the planet. You know, former FBI agent, like he protects this place, he loves it. I know that guy, done ministry for a year with that guy. If he just walked out on me, he's like, dude, I'm cut off from that guy. That hurt. Let's say my wife. My wife's different from Zach, different from Kevin, different from Mark. If she just walked out, you're like, oh man, cut off. I want nothing to do with this guy. My kids, oh my goodness, that would hurt. Do you see the difference in relationship between Zach and my wife? Think about the Father and the Son. Every time that Jesus speaks about the Lord, he says Father, except when he's on the cross, when he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? He's literally saying, I have been Oh, dude, photo guy just walked out, and I thought that was you, Zach. I was like, that's a great teaching moment right there. He's like, really? Really? But here's the thing. You have this moment where he's like, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you forsaken me? And he's simply going, I have been cut and cursed and cut out for this time. I have taken on everything. Everything. And friends, I'm telling you, you start reading this and it starts, when it says, for it is written, Paul quotes Deuteronomy from the Torah twice. He says this, curses everyone who is hung on a pole. Because if you were hung on a pole, that was an example, don't be this guy. Because if you do wrong, you will be cut off. You will not have belonging. So behave if you want belonging. And again, it was this faith plus obedience, then you will find connection to the community. Continues on, verse 14. This is so beautiful. He redeemed us in order that the blessing given to Abraham might come through the Gentiles through Christ Jesus, so that by faith we might receive the promise of the Spirit. What's he saying here? Is that when God looks at Jesus, it's as if he saw us. But the blessing teaches us that when God looks at us, it's as if he sees Jesus. And sometimes we miss this. Because you have to understand that if we find ourselves getting into this like sneaky works-based faith, because we just find ourselves going, oh man, I messed up again. What do I have to do? I should probably go to church. I'm just gonna do this. Maybe I'll just add a little bit more to the offering plate. I'm just gonna volunteer now in kids. Like, I'm gonna try and earn my salvation. And little by little, we just do this on the regular. You know what? How many of you have ever had a moment where you're like, you messed up and you're like, okay, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna read my Bible tomorrow. I'm gonna go on a 7-day YouVersion reading plan. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but all of a sudden, if you're really, really honest, some of it's like, I'm gonna work my way back into good standing with God. And who's the onus on? You. What you do. That if you do enough, God just might love you a little bit more. If you just do enough, God might just bless you enough. Do you understand what the cross is? The cross is the picture. I gave my son so that you would know that you have profound blessing. And that's all you need. But for many of us, we're like, oh man, I just gotta do this, I'm gonna 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 do this. If I can just prove this, if I can just do this, if I can just do this, then God's actually gonna shower blessing upon me. And friends, God's not holding back on you. That is again, this false works gospel. This is what Paul is going after. Second point, the meaning of law and promise. Stay with me, I promise you this is going somewhere, I hope. It says this, brothers and sisters, let me take an example from everyday life. Just as no one can set aside or add to a human covenant that has been duly established, so it is in this case. Continues. The promises were spoken to Abraham and to his seed. Paul's brilliant because he's gonna take one word, seed, instead of seeds, and he's gonna build an entire theology on it, which is unbelievable. Look what it says, verse 17. Scripture does not say, and to seeds, meaning many people, but and to your seed, meaning one person who is in Christ. Stay with me, it continues. What I mean is this, the law, introduced 430 years later, does not set aside the covenant previously established by God and thus do away with the promise. For if the inheritance depends on the law, then it no longer depends on the promise. But God, in his grace, gave it to Abraham through a promise. Stay with me. Why then was the law given at all? it was added because of transgressions until the seed to whom the promise referred had come. The law was given through angels and entrusted to a mediator. A mediator, however, implies more than one party, but God is one. Now, is the law therefore opposed to the promises of God? Absolutely not. This is huge. I'll explain all of this in a moment. For if a law had been given that could impart life, then righteousness would certainly have come by the law. But Abraham said, Sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? Now, I jumped right there to Genesis 15 because you have to understand something. Oftentimes when we talk about the law as New Testament Christ followers, we think the law is bad. We think Paul wanted to do away with the law. No. Paul loved the law. Paul believed in the law. Paul thought the teachings of the scriptures mattered. He just didn't think it was a matter of salvation. And he says that the inheritance that was given to the people of God, they thought it was all just a land, this promised land. And in this land, they were going to be a blessing to the world. But Paul says, no, you don't understand. It's not just the land, but it's through a seed. That someday, that through this lineage, there was gonna be a man that's gonna come, and he's actually gonna open up everything so that people can experience God. This is so radically different. Because for so many people, they go, the law's bad, the law's bad. No, the law wasn't bad. The law just wasn't something that could get you to be made right forever with God, like Christ could. And the amazing thing about this, and I want you to see this, is here we got some Cardinal fans. If I said, hey, I got tickets to the game where they're gonna beat Trey Lance and the San Francisco 49ers. Whoa, easy, Cougar, easy. They're right here. All you have to do is believe that those tickets are there, and you would come up on stage and you'd grab those tickets, you're like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. But if I told you, hey, if you wash my car, my house, and like you actually do my laundry, and you do that, then I have tickets. It's a law. And this is what often happens, we play this if-then game. The promise is actually trusting that God actually says what he says. And this is what's so confusing about this passage, is because Paul's not going after the law, he's just saying the law isn't gonna save you. And so often though, we feel more comfortable in an if-then relationship with God. God, if I do this, then you do this for me. If I go to church every weekend, and I love church, I don't miss very many services. I love church. But sometimes we get into this mentality, if then, it's on us. But when you see the promise and what Paul's trying to get at, the promise that God made, all that he had to do to Abraham was put it out there. And Abraham just had to trust him, to walk in faith. And when we live our life not making and putting the onus on us, but putting it on the promiser, it's a game changer. Does God say this? I'm gonna believe it. Is God who he says he is? I'm gonna believe it. But so often we flip it to go, man, if I do this, then God's gotta do this. If I do this, then God's gonna do this. If I do all of this, then God's gotta bless me. No. God has already blessed you. Now can you walk into that? Changes everything. But this is what's so beautiful is in this Genesis passage, Abraham is having this conversation with God, and God's saying, here's what I wanna do, Abram. I wanna bless you. I wanna give you a land. I wanna do all of this stuff. And Abraham asks the most honest question. He asks a question that I imagine you all ask, I know I ask, and it's this: how can I know? How can I know the promises are true? How can I know that you are for me? How can I know? How can I literally know That this is actually worth it, because we live in a world of calculated risk. We live in a world that go, if I can calculate the odds that they are in my favor, then I'll go. But literally, the life of faith is going, you said it, I'm trusting it, I'm gonna step out in it, help me with my unbelief. And I'm telling you what, Abraham's like, how can I know? Look what God says to him, Genesis 15. This is so important to understanding the entirety of the scriptures. So the Lord said to him, bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. Then he says, Abraham brought all these things to them, cut them in two, and arranged the halves on opposite sides of each other. So this is what he gets the heifer, the goat, the dove, the pigeon, cuts them in half, puts stuff on one side and stuff on other side. This is covenant. This is covenant. This is how you would literally showcase a covenant. Continues on. The birds, however, he did not cut in half, because I think it would have been too messy. Continues. Then birds of prey came down on the carcasses, but Abram drove them away, going, nothing is gonna get in the way of this covenant. Love this. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a thick and dreadful darkness came over him. This is so human. How do I know, God? How do I know? I can trust the law because it's on me. I can trust if I do these things, it's on. How do I know your promises are good? And you gotta understand that this idea of cutting in half was literally, if you walked through this and you didn't fulfill your covenant, that would happen to you. You would be cut in half. So it was this really prop-driven picture of how you can say, you can trust me. And Abram is going, oh, man, I see what God's wanting me to do. He's like cutting things in half. He's gonna want me to walk through. But look what it says. When the sun had set and darkness had fallen, a smoking fire pot, this is like a green egg back in the day, with a blazing torch appeared and passed between the pieces. God walks through, not Abram. God says, if you can trust me, I'm going first. And if I don't follow through with what I said, cut me in half. It's not on Abram, it's on God. And I'm telling you, friends, this is the gospel. It's not on us, it's on God. It's not on us, it's on Jesus. And I'm telling you, we do this with our kids, we do this in our work, we do this in our quiet times, we just miss out. So what are the consequences? What's the consequences of not understanding the gospel? Here's what it is. There were 613 mitzvot, laws. And every day, like, you did them. And you tried to do them well. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh man, like I had a lustful thought. And then so you went back down, you got like a lamb, did nothing wrong to you, and you took the lamb, you went to the temple, and then you killed the lamb, and you basically put your sin on the lamb to atone for you. And then you're like leaving the temple, and then you see that one person that you can't stand, you're like, I don't like you, and you're like, dang it, I messed up. And you gotta go get like another lamb, and you go back to the temple, and you're just like, okay, be made right with God. You're made right with God, go back. And all of a sudden, this is starting to cost money, and you're like, I don't wanna give God my favorite lamb, and a perfect lamb. I'm gonna give like this like three-legged blind lamb that we call Lucky, and I'm gonna bring Lucky up there. I'm gonna just like climb up, and I'm just gonna like go through the motions and go through the routine because I'm supposed to do this. Dang it, I wanna watch the football game, but it's Sabbath. I can't watch stuff with electronics. Dang it, okay. And you just do this. This is your life. Up, down, stay with me, camera guy. Up, down, up, down, up, down. Exhausting. And sometimes in the church, this is what we do. Just do this. Just do a little bit better. Just try a little bit harder. Just go. Just read a little bit more. Just do. None of that stuff's wrong. But sometimes we just get into this faith plus obedience, then I'll be right with God mentality. It's not the gospel. Can I tell you what the gospel simply is? Gospel is simply do versus done. You have to deal with this every day. And here's the question. Is the gospel about what I do? Or is the gospel about what was done for me? Because I'll tell you what, I will outwork and I will out hustle and I will achieve and I will push and I will do all the reading plans. I will do everything that I know how. And I'm not saying it's not gonna make me a better, wiser person. It's just not gonna save me. And it's literally gonna prevent me from walking in the promise that God says, I love you no matter. Because when I see you, I don't see what you do, I see what my son did for you. And the problem is, many of us are exhausted and tired, and what we are literally producing is not a fruit of the Spirit, it's fruit of the flesh. And it's tired, and it's weary, and we're climbing, and we're going up, and we're going down, but here's the literal gospel. And I'm afraid of heights. This is the gospel. This is the gospel. I see what you did. And I see you going up and down, up and down, up and down. And the law literally was trying to be a gift for you, because I didn't want you to be so like mentally distraught and shame-based. I just wanted you to have an opportunity to like go through a step to say, for the time being, you're good. But it became the way of life. And so Jesus said, no. This is exhausting for you. So I'm gonna release everything that I have. I sit at the right hand of the Father. I have all the power in the world. I can do whatever I want. I'm gonna empty myself out. I'm gonna come to you. And again, it's not about what you do. It's not about anything that you do. It's not about how good you look. It doesn't matter about your bank account. It doesn't matter about your race. It doesn't matter about what it matters is about what I was willing to do to die on a cross. And it's not just about forgiveness. It's about promise. And the promise is, you are my son, you are my daughter, you are my beloved, you are forgiven. But when you live this up-down life, you know what you're doing? You're not just tiring yourself out, but you keep putting Jesus back up on the cross. Because you're saying, I don't actually trust the promise. I don't actually believe that I trust that God passed through first. You're literally saying, I only trust what I do. And can you imagine if we were a church that said, you did this for me? In spite of all my addictions, in spite of my anger, in spite of the ways that I have cursed and cut myself off, the stuff that I've done, you still came down for me, and you were willing to cut yourself open, cut yourself off, experience the full weight of curse so I could experience the full weight of promise and blessing. That's the gospel. That's why it's good news. But we love to go, Jesus plus a whole bunch of laws and rules equals salvation. And you know the math formula, Jesus plus nothing equals everything. Because it's what he did for us. And when you can grab hold of that, and it's not always easy. Because in my work life, it's what I do to be the very best. But in my salvation, it's not about achieving. It's about receiving. And I just think for some of you, you are exhausted. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. For some of you, you're like, you feel cut off and you're like, I just gotta do this just a little bit more, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. And Paul would say, it's foolish. Who's gotten your brain and told you this? This is the gospel. I'm not saying the law is bad. The law had a point and a practice and a purpose, but that does not affect the promise. And the promise is just something you can receive. We have all sinned. We have all fallen short of the glory of God. All of us are in need of a Savior. And thanks be to God, he didn't just watch going, look how tired they are. Man, he came down so that you would walk in this life, that you would clothe yourselves in the way of salvation. You'd begin to see that your story is Jesus' story, that when God saw you, he didn't see what you've done, he saw what Christ did for you. And it's in that you go, gosh, someone would love me that much? It's not on me, it's on the promiser. It's on the one who's bestowing promise after promise after promise after promise after promise after promise, and who's willing to go first. That's the gospel. And when you live in that, and I guarantee you, there's some of you sitting here, you're like, man, I grew up in the church, I never knew this. Or some of you are like, I can't really understand this. And some of you are probably asking, how do I know? Like Abram, how do I know? You don't know my life, Steve. You don't know the things I've done. Yeah, I know. Just do this for me. No matter whoever you think is the smartest, wisest, healthiest Christ follower who's ever lived, you can throw out a name. I had a mentor once do this for me. I said, maybe, let's say Billy Graham's right here, because he's Captain Integrity. And maybe I'm right here. Billy still has a whole bunch to get to the top. And maybe you're right here. You still got a whole bunch and you can work. But the gospel is God saying, no. I'm gonna come to you and I'm gonna die for you, and I'm gonna substitute my life, my story for yours, so that you can have all the riches and favor and blessing of grace and heaven. And I don't know about you, but as someone who loves studying the stock market, who's always trying to find what's the next deal, that's a pretty great deal. It's a pretty incredible, makes no sense, but that's the reckless love of God for you. So maybe today is just the simple question. And the worship team is gonna come up and just gonna sing a song. And there's a section that we're gonna read. You're gonna read. And you're gonna see up on the screen from Galatians 3. And this section is a section that for many of us, we probably know, we've heard, but that would have been the easier teach. But that section only makes sense fully when you understand what we just walked through. And as you read it, I just want you to ask, is my life living by the law or the promise? Is my life all about what I do or what has been done for me? And how essential is the cross and what Christ has done in me in shaping how I am as a man or woman, how I am as a father or mother, how I am as a husband or wife, how I am as a friend, how I am as a human. It's not about you. It's about him and what he did for you. God, I just pray right now. I pray that something inside us would begin to break. For the ways in which we just slowly morph this gospel into a story that simply says, man, if I believe and I behave, then I can belong to you, God. But I pray as we just see these words from Galatians 3, this promise that has been spoken over us, I pray that with newfound perspective, with our hearts open, our minds open, our ears open, our lives open, we would not be people of the law, we would be people of the promise. It's not always what we see, it's not always what we feel, it's what we declare to be true. The Bible, your word, it's true. The promises are true. And everything is on you. You put it all on you. We're the foolish ones who put it on us. You put it on you. And I'm just asking God that for us as a church, we'd let you carry it again. And we'd receive the goodness you want to give to us. Clothe us in the name of your Son. Baptize our mind and our heart to see as you see. And let us be people of the promise, not of the law.
When the weight of life begins to fall, on the name of Jesus I will call. For I know my God is in control, and His purpose is unshakable. It doesn't matter what I feel, it doesn't matter what I see, my hope will always be your promises to me. Now I'm casting out all fear, for your love has set me free. My hope will always be your promises to me. Would you go ahead and stand up with us? As I walk the days to come, I will not forget what you've done. For you have supplied my every need, and your presence is enough for me. Doesn't matter what I feel, doesn't matter what I see, my hope will always be your promises to me. Now I'm casting out all fear, for your love has set me free. My hope will always be your promises to me. You will always be more than enough for me. You will always be more than enough for me. Nothing's gonna stop the plans you made. Nothing's gonna take your love away. You will always be more than enough for me. You will always be more than enough for me. You will always be more than enough for me. Nothing's gonna stop the plans you made. Nothing's gonna take your love away. You will always be more than enough
Hey, this week, Wednesday night, for all you guys who want to pick up an axe and throw it at something, it's just, you should do it. You should do it. If you've never done it before, you should do it. It gets a lot of aggression out, and it's fun. So go to the website, you can learn more. Next week, Eugene Cho will be back. She'll be fantastic. He's excited. Galatians 4. But would you put your hands out? This is just a posture. A posture. And again, just my prayer has been this. My brothers and sisters of Mission Community Church, may we recognize that we have been freed from the law and free to receive, to walk, to enjoy, to live into the full promises of God. That it's not about what we do, but it is about what Christ has done for us. And I pray that in every moment of this week, you would begin to see, oh, it's not about what I do here. It's not about what I try and do here. It's not about trying harder here. It's about receiving the promise, believing the promise, living into the promise that won't just transform me, but that will transform all around me. Have a blessed week. Grace and peace. See you again soon.